What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Cosmic Turtle, and today I'm going to be talking about Naruto, a series that I love, but that has a lot of ups and downs. And what we're looking at today is how the series treats its side characters, namely the Konoha 13, and what we can do to fix that and improve how they're written. This isn't necessarily going to mean buffing all of them to match Naruto and Sasuke, but they should be able to hold their own throughout the series. More importantly though, what I want to discuss is how these characters can be more connected to the plot overall, whether that's individual arcs or the story as a whole. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's start with the character who needs the most work, which is pretty clearly Sakura. There are countless videos and write-ups on what others would do to improve her, but here's my take. Sakura should be played up as the genius she is. Maybe not quite as smart as Shikamaru, but the brains of Team 7 nonetheless. Have her formulate plans that Naruto and Sasuke put into action. Have her understand situations the quickest. Now this should be coupled with her own feelings of inferiority to both Naruto and Sasuke, and how she wishes she was strong enough to be able to help them, but she should certainly be the smartest of the three, and this should be well known. What I would also do is have her clan, and by extension her parents, be a little more prominent. Kakashi says early on in the series that Sakura has an affinity for genjutsu, so let's run with that. Make the Haruno clan a clan of genjutsu specialists, and have Sakura learn their techniques, maybe something based around flowers. Have her eventually learn from Kurenai a little, which gives her another boost. She'll still eventually be trained by Tsunade and learn healing jutsu and chakra strength, but the genjutsu should definitely be more prominent. This is also a way of bringing Sakura's parents into the story and heightening that contrast between her family dynamics and Naruto and Sasuke's loneliness. And getting back to Tsunade, I think Sakura should definitely, by the end of the series, be a slug sage. I know we never really saw this idea in canon, but I think it's really cool and it'd be a great upgrade for her to get a little closer to that Naruto and Sasuke level. In terms of her personality, the one thing we really have to do is make her a little more likable. That means making her quickly realize how mean she's being to Naruto, and making a conscious effort to be nicer to him. It also means toning down her obsession with Sasuke. I get it, she's 12 and has a crush. But at the beginning of the series there's nothing else on her mind, which makes her feel like an empty character. I would have the focus instead be on her insecurities, feeling like she's not good enough, and nervous about her ability to learn her clan's techniques. And most importantly, she should feel a little insecure with her position as a regular shinobi on a team with a Jinchuriki and a child prodigy. I think it's important because there's a lot of potential to explore Sakura's lack of self-confidence in a way other than her cutting her hair off, and then losing that fight anyway. The easiest way to do this, though, is probably one of the most common changes I see people say they would make to Naruto, and that is put another arc in between the Land of Waves and the Chunin exams. After what's essentially a no-show for Sakura in the Land of Waves, she should begin to feel a little lost, a little down over not being able to keep up. And this arc could focus on her journey to do that. That way, by the time the Chunin exams roll around, she'll actually be able to take care of herself, and maybe she can even defeat Ino in their match and make it to the finals. I think it'd be a really cool thing to have all of Team 7 there. The last thing I'll say about Sakura is that I really think she should get over Sasuke at some point in Shippuden. Maybe it can even be after the 5 Kage Summit when she meets him again. Maybe that's the moment she gives up on him, but regardless, I think it needs to happen. I really think it'd be more fitting if Naruto was the last person in Sasuke's corner, and so Sakura should flip the switch at some point and come to see him as an enemy. By extension, I'd have the two of them not get together at the end of the series, which I don't think is too controversial to take, but I'm still putting it in here. Either way, like I said, the obsession needs to be toned down so that Sakura can stand on her own as an equal to Naruto and Sasuke, not just a love-struck, second-tier heroine. There's another member of Team 7 who I think deserves mentioning here, and that's Sai. Sai is an interesting case because he's the only member of the Konoha 13 to be a part of Anbu, so I think that should be a bigger focus for his character. In an ideal world, Danzo plays a greater role sooner in the story, and I think having Sai deciding whether between he wants to step out into the light with Team 7 or remain in the darkness with Danzo should be a bigger emotional arc for him, not necessarily solvable in one mission. I've always liked the idea of Sai acting as the connector to the darker side of the village, and that's a good way to explore that. Going off of that, maybe he could be a little more ruthless on missions. Maybe he could be the one to remind Naruto and Sakura the realities of shinobi life. I also think he'd be a good way to introduce the village politics through the audience, through his connection to Danzo. Maybe he and Yamato can explain who Danzo is, why he's important, as a precursor to Sasuke going after him later on. But speaking of that fight, this might be a hot take, but I would actually have Sai be the one to take down Danzo. I get that it's an important moment for Sasuke, but I just think Sai has so much potential to be such an interesting character if he ultimately decides to defect from Root and Anbu and betray Danzo, realizing his crimes against the village for what they are and being the one to take him down for them. Hell, maybe he and Sasuke can do it together, but I think Sai taking down Danzo would serve to show his friend's influence on him and his growth as a character. Side note, I really love Sai's jutsu, so he should just use them more instead of getting new ones. I think they're plenty strong enough for the role he has to play, although if he were to go after Danzo, using some secret jutsu that's reserved for root members would be pretty cool too. Aside from Team 7, easily the best developed member of the Konoha 13 is Shikamaru. While that's not really a high bar to clear, I think he serves as a good example of how the rest of these characters can feel important without taking over the plot or being too overpowered. He's involved in the story, and he has an emotional arc that plays directly into the plot. Sounds like a good character to me. One thing I would add is give him a better variety of jutsu, maybe of the earth style, which is his affinity. And even though his shadow jutsu is sick, don't get me wrong, it feels like there's more there. Maybe he could, wear the shadows like an armor, or maybe use them to make weapons, something like that. I get it, he's not the most offensively minded shinobi, but even just using a quote-unquote ultimate jutsu once in a while would be really cool for him. I've always loved this character and his personality, so I think he's good there. All in all, I really like Shikamaru, and I think he's a good model for the rest of the Konoha 13. The question is, how do we improve everyone else? Let's take Ino for example. Ino's a really interesting character, because not only does she have one of the craziest, most broken jutsu in the series, she's also the rival of Sakura, the series' female lead. The problem with Ino is that she's never on screen. She does practically nothing after the Chunin exams until the final war, except develop a little crush on Sai and learn to be a decent healer from Tsunade. I think we should change that. If we go with the early idea of having Sakura win their fight in the Chunin exams, we can focus on Ino feeling inferior for once. She was always in a position of power over Sakura, but now she's been surpassed, and that really rubs her the wrong way. Maybe that's what pushes her to train under Tsunade. And since we've given Sakura Genjutsu, we can make Ino the better healer, so she isn't just a Sakura clone. In Shippuden, Ino can be high in demand as the best young healer in the village, which maybe allows her to get one over on Sakura at some point. Either way, I think keeping them as real rivals really helps their dynamic, and keeping them even-ish, at least for a little bit, would be helpful. In terms of plot, 3 major things I would do for Ino. First of all, she absolutely must, no questions asked, help Shikamaru take down Hidan. I understand that with Shikamaru's arc, and he can still be the mastermind of the plan, but leaving Ino out of that revenge story just feels unfair. They're too good as a team to be thrown aside for Naruto and Kakashi to steal the spotlight. The second thing is having her get over Sasuke as well. Whereas I said Sakura would realize this somewhere in Shippuden, by the end of the time skip, I think Ino should already be moved on from Sasuke. Maybe be a little bit sad about it still, but I think Ino should be one of the reasons Sakura ends up realizing it's not worth chasing after Sasuke forever. It gives her a little more maturity and helps them bridge that gap from rivals to best friends. The last thing for Ino is to have her father die in Pain's assault instead of waiting until the Fourth Shinobi War. What this does is allow Ino to step up during the assault and coordinate communication through her jutsu. This gives her something to do other than cry over Shizune, who ends up being brought back to life anyway. And side note here, I think Arena Rebirth is a real cop-out, and I would take that out of the story completely, but anyway. By the time the war comes around, we can throw in a scene of Ino mentally preparing herself to help run the communication for the entire Shinobi Alliance, like her dad did. I think Ino works best if she's away from the combat side of things, as she eventually steps into the role as the head of Konoha's barrier team. As for the last member of Team 10, Choji, full disclosure here, I love him in the Sasuke retrieval arc. His fight versus Jirobo is one of my favorite in part 1, and his character arc is handled beautifully during it. That said, it feels like more than any other character that Choji's arc is pretty well wrapped up by the end of it. And so, with that in mind, and with much sadness, I would actually have Choji die from that battle. Who knows if this is true or not, but rumor is that Kishimoto was going to kill Choji and Neji in their fights in the Sasuke retrieval arc, but was persuaded not to by his editors. Again, who knows, but I'm going to go with the Choji part of that and have him succumb to the effects of the food pills. For me, this does 2 really important things. First of all, it closes Choji's character at the right moment. Look online and you'll find a ton of people saying how perfect Choji's final moments were, only to have it cheapened by his eventual saving a few episodes later. I really think there is value in endings, both to stories and to characters, and I think Choji's death here serves as the perfect ending for him. The second thing Choji's death does is turn everyone against Sasuke immediately. Shikamaru and Ino will likely never forgive him, and neither will the rest of the Konoha 13, other than Naruto and Sakura, who, like I said, will eventually turn on him too. It adds a little bit more emotional weight to Naruto's quest to bring him back, as the rest of the village comes to hate him. And so, Sorry, Choji. You're gonna have to take one for the team here. Neji is a character in a similar boat as Choji. His fight against Shikamaru was amazing, and it felt at the end as though he was really gonna die. But whereas I do think killing Choji adds more than it takes away, I think Neji has too much potential to have a great impact to kill him off there, and so I'd keep him alive as he is in the original. Going off that, I think one of the things I would add to his character in part 1 is some more character interactions. I would love to see some more scenes of Neji and Hinata after the Chunin exams, slowly realizing that they care for each other, and that they've both been sort of put down by the traditions of the Hyuga. I also think there's room for Neji and Sasuke to have a moment after the Chunin exams, where they understand one another through their feelings of being left behind by Naruto. I'm not saying they should be friends by any means, but having that connection between the two would be a bonus, because I think one of the ways Neji should become more closely tied to the plot in Shippuden is by having him and a few other members of the Konoha 13, namely Shino, Hinata, and Shikamaru, run into Sasuke and Hebi during the Itachi pursuit mission. Not only would it show the ever-increasing divide between Konoha and Sasuke, it would also allow Neji and Sasuke to fight, the first Byakugan versus Sharingan battle in the series. It's a real missed opportunity in my opinion that this never happened, so I'm adding it in. After this fight, I also think Neji should try to talk Naruto out of going after Sasuke, causing Naruto to waver in that quest. One of the things I've seen tossed around in other videos is the idea of the Tenseigan being changed to be an upgrade of the Byakugan, sort of like how the Mangekyo is with the Sharingan. I would definitely give Neji this upgraded Tenseigan to have him keep up a little with people like Naruto, and honestly, it would be really sick to see Neji as the badass he should be. As for his death at the end of the series, I would actually switch the timing of it with Hinata stepping in for Naruto against Pain. I'll get more into Hinata later, but I think having Neji die here saving Naruto from Pain is more impactful. First of all, it would make way more sense that he die in an actual fight rather than from a flying stick, but second and more importantly, I really like the idea of Naruto, Hinata, and everyone else having time within the story to process Neji's death. In the war this doesn't really happen, as they're forced to move on quickly, but here there can be real moments of grief after Pain's assault, where Naruto and Hinata talk to each other about Neji, where Lee, Tenten, and Guy come to terms with his death. Now I know Neji's death isn't that popular within the fanbase, but I do think him sacrificing himself for Naruto actually works. I just think the execution in the original wasn't that great. But speaking of Team Guy, let's talk about maybe its most important member, Lee. Lee is almost the perfect supporting character in part 1, where he has what may be the greatest emotional moment in the series, and then an emotional arc afterwards that deals with the ramifications of his decision to push himself beyond his limits. It's almost flawless. The issue is, it's a little too short. And so instead of adding anything new to Lee's character, I think what would work best is to stretch out the time it takes for him to recover from his injuries. In other words, Tsunade doesn't fully heal him during the Sasuke retrieval arc. I think she could do something to help him out, like a more minor operation that helps him get back to regular use of his arm and leg, but I think by the end of part 1, Lee shouldn't be ready to go yet, and I think he should still be rehabbing at the beginning of Shippuden. And this means that he, like Naruto, would remain a genin, and this is something they could bond over in the early parts of Shippuden, only for Lee to come to realize how far ahead of him Naruto has gotten, as well as the rest of his friends. This would come to a head after the battle with Hidan and Kakuzu, where Lee hears about Naruto's new jutsu. At this point, Tsunade comes to him with the results of her research. There's a surgery she can perform on him, but it's really risky. Lee struggles with this for a bit as he does in the original, but ultimately decides to do it. So instead of having his triumphant return against Kimimaro, he has it against Sasuke and saves Neji and the others from Hebi. Side note, this would be the catalyst for Neji sacrificing himself for Naruto, but either way, Lee is back with a bang and forces Sasuke to withdraw, opening the gates further than he ever has before. As for Neji's death during the Pain arc, that should be a moment where Lee realizes there are some things that can't be done with brute force. He would begin training again, fully, and in the final war I would have him 1. Have better control over the 8 gates, and 2. Start to use seals, sort of like how Tenten seals weapons away in scrolls. They can even work together to help Lee develop this, but a combination of Lee's martial arts and weaponry would be pretty lethal, I think. And one more thing, I would have Guy actually die here, not be saved by Ninja Jesus Naruto, and so Lee has to come to terms with that loss as well. To be honest, I think Lee's performance in part 1 carries him throughout the series a little, so I think a couple more moments like this would work really well for him. Now, the elephant in the room here, without a doubt, is Tenten, who is probably the worst character on this list and probably the worst character in the series. She does pretty much nothing the entire time except get her ass kicked by Temari. The filler does remedy this a little bit by showing her in action, but I mean, let's be real, she's useless. So let's use that battle with Temari as a starting point. After the Chunin exams, or in the month break in between the preliminaries and the finals, Tenten realizes how incredible Lee and Neji are and becomes determined to get to their level, sorta like Sakura. But this would hold a little extra weight for her because Lee is now out of commission and Tenten feels like she needs to do this for him, to become a great shinobi for Lee, who is no longer able to. That said, we should also have a scene of Tenten meeting Tsunade, who is stated to be her hero, and how that inspires her to be even better. Part of me thinks Tenten should be on the Sasuke retrieval mission, but I really do like that arc as is, and the matchups. So maybe while the guys are trying to get Sasuke back, Tenten and the rest of the girls go on a related mission, like searching for Orochimaru's hideout, or even just gathering some intel on them, like figuring out where they could be taking Sasuke. Just an idea so that she and Ino and Sakura and Hinata don't spend the rest of part 1 doing nothing. Where I really think Tenten can shine though is in part 2. At some point, Tenten needs to get one of the 7 ninja swords. One idea I had is her getting Samehada from Kisame, though I'm not exactly sure where that would fit into the story. More than likely, I think it'd do good to add an extra facet to the Itachi pursuit mission. While Naruto and Team 7 look for Itachi, and Neji and Co run into Sasuke, Tenten, Kiba, and Shino find themselves in the abandoned city. You know, the one with the old cat lady and her granddaughter? In the original, this was stated to be a supplier of the Uchiha clan's tools, so let's add on to that, and make them now a supplier of the Akatsuki as well. Tenten, Kiba, and Shino stumble upon this shop, and run into Deidara and Tobi, and a fight ensues. I'll get into Kiba and Shino in a minute, but for Tenten this would be a great opportunity to get one of the 7 ninja swords, like Kabutoari or Kiba, which would low-key make for a good joke since Kiba is on this mission as well, but anyway. And then in the final war, I think Tenten should make use of at least one of the Sage of Six Paths tools. Probably either the Kokinjo or the Kohaku no Johei, or maybe even both. Using the Kohaku no Johei to seal someone powerful away would be really sick for Tenten, or even just having her use one of the other tools in battle and defeat someone noteworthy, maybe like a former 7 swordsman of the Mist, would be great for making her a more important character. One battle I really want to add in for Tenten and the rest of the girls is against Konan during Pain's invasion. I know I said before that Ino would work way better away from combat, but I think the idea of Tenten, Sakura, Ino, and Hinata teaming up against Konan is too cool to pass up, and it would give them all some much needed action. But let's go back to Kiba. So we're going to add in that mission for him, Shino and Tenten. But how do we buff Kiba so that he doesn't feel as left behind in Shippuden? One thing I was thinking was giving him a couple more ninja dogs after the time skip. Maybe he showed he was capable of handling more than one, so his clan allowed him to work with 3. Either way, I think it would open up the possibilities for his moveset, and would make him a bit of a force. But to add to that, I also think Akamaru should die at some point in part 2, and I think a good place for that to happen is on that mission to the abandoned city. The reason for that is I think one power-up that would suit Kiba is a pseudo-sage mode based on a dog or a wolf. It could be a secret technique of the Inuzuka clan that the elders teach him early on in Shippuden. And after Akamaru's death against Deidara, Kiba awakens that power fully and gets a major boost, and is also able to save Tenten and Shino from the Akatsuki so that the 3 of them can get back to Konoha and report their intel. I think Kiba should really be the star of this section of the arc, and it would add a lot to his character. Of course he needs some more screen time in the final war too, but kind of how Shikamaru has his own emotional arc in Shippuden which cemented him as an important character, I think this would do the same for Kiba. Shino is a bit of a more interesting story. Personally, I think he's one of the strongest members of the Konoha 13 as is. He's just severely underutilized. So 2 extra missions I would give Shino. The first, since we're keeping Lee injured for longer, have Shino take his place on the Sasuke retrieval mission. Whether we keep him fighting Kimimaro or shuffle the battles around a little, doesn't really matter. The point is Shino should have been on that mission, and his involvement would have elevated his perception in this fanbase 100-fold, I guarantee it. The second mission to add to Shino's resume is the one to the abandoned city with Kiba and Tenten. Another opportunity for him to show his skills, but I think what would be really cool here is if this is the point we see Shino get angry. I know it's kind of hard to imagine, but I think him sort of losing it, shouting at Kiba, maybe to keep fighting after Akamaru's death, would add some much needed depth to his character. And speaking of depth, if Shino's going to be an academy teacher at the end of the series, I would have him be interested in that earlier. There can be a scene of Iruka introducing him to a class as a student teacher, only for Shino to end up scaring the students. I think these kind of scenes are just as important as power buffs, and they would really help make Shino a more well-rounded character, and a little more likable too. Now, the last supporting character to talk about is Hinata, but to be honest, I think the best way to fix her is to move her out of that role of supporting and have her feel a little more like a main character. As Naruto's love interest, she should have been given a higher priority throughout the series, as opposed to just individual moments where the audience had to be reminded of her crush on Naruto. So, first things first, her jutsu. I said the Tenseigan being an upgraded Byakugan is a cool idea, so have Hinata pick up on that at some point too. Since Neji is now sacrificing himself in the pain arc, have Hinata learn this sometime between that and the war, so she can whip it out when it really counts. Like I said when I was talking about Neji, there should be more moments between the two of them that show their relationship developing after the Chunin exams. I think it would be great to have them bond over Hinata's shyness and Neji's misery, both stemming from the same stifling traditions of the Hyuga clan. And by the start of Shippuden, the two of them can really be closer, sort of like a brother and sister relationship, where Neji secretly defends Hinata, pushes her to be better. Maybe he's even one of the people silently rooting for her to get with Naruto. Regardless though, I think showing more of their relationship is a way to track Hinata getting more and more comfortable with herself. And to add on to that, Hinata needs to steadily grow more confident throughout the series, to the point where she needs to be able to have a conversation with Naruto during the early parts of Shippuden. She should still be shy, yeah, because that's who she is, but having these tangible markers of progress would be helpful for her and allow the audience to connect with her more easily. Have her do things like talk to Naruto after Sasuke leaves, or after Jiraiya is killed by pain, letting go of her insecurity to be there for the person she cares about. And to really wrap up her arc, there needs to be a scene in the final war of Hinata saving Naruto. I really liked the thought of it during Pain's assault, but it left a bad taste in my mouth when nothing happened with it afterwards. So I think moving this to the final war not only heightens the importance of Hinata stepping up, finally gaining the confidence to be strong, but it also ties her more directly to the series story overall, where she reaches her peak with the rest of the story. And even though I do like Naruto turning into his six-tailed form after Hinata's death in the original, seeing as how we have that covered by Neji, I think Hinata should actually hold her own against whoever it is that she's protecting Naruto from. Maybe it is Obito or Madara, and she eventually ends up losing, but I think more time should be spent with Naruto in that moment, watching Hinata and realizing how he's always felt about her, before finally stepping back into the fight. I really do think Hinata's a great character, and with some growth and some more emotional weight to her arc, I think she would work really well as Naruto's love interest. Now speaking of Naruto, I know I said in the beginning of this video that this was about the side characters, but seeing as how the premise is to improve all of the Konoha 13, let's talk about all of the Konoha 13, which includes Naruto and Sasuke. It's hard to talk about one without talking about the other, and it's hard to talk about either and change either of them without taking the entire plot of the series off the rails. But nevertheless, I think there are a few things that we can do to Naruto and Sasuke to elevate them. For Naruto, the first one is really simple, and it's a common complaint you see a lot about the series, but I'll say it again. He needs a far bigger moveset than he has in canon. Shadow clones and the Rasengan are great, but spamming them over and over not only gets boring, but it also doesn't seem like a good strategy for a shinobi. Ninja should be versatile, able to react to any situation, so I'd like to see Naruto have some more jutsu to pull from. Some wind style would really go a long way for this. He could probably learn this while off training with Jiraiya, because even though it's stated that Jiraiya spent most of his time helping Naruto control the fox, that didn't really happen either, seeing as how he lost control shortly after the time skip, so let's just say this training trip was comprehensive and taught Naruto a bunch of other stuff too. Maybe some wind style jutsu, maybe some other ways to utilize toads would be a good start, kind of like how Jiraiya can do combination attacks with Gamabunta. And speaking of jutsu, I don't care what anyone says, Naruto needs to learn the Flying Raijin. It is one of the coolest jutsu in the series, and his dad's specialty. I get we don't want to make him an exact Minato clone with the Rasengan and the Flying Raijin, but it is too cool to pass up. In terms of the story, there are a couple things I'd sprinkle in for Naruto throughout the series, just to add a little bit more depth to him. The first thing is that the audience should see Naruto's resentment towards the villagers throughout the series. The scene with Dark Naruto at the Waterfall of Truth is pretty cool and it's a great concept, but that conflict seems like it just came out of nowhere a little bit. So I think we need to see Naruto's feelings towards the villagers pop up at other points. I know one of the series' main themes is love and breaking the cycle of hatred, but I think Naruto should have a bigger emotional arc in dealing with those feelings. He should forgive everyone in the end still, just to line up with themes and everything, but I think seeing him struggle to reconcile how the people of Konoha see him as a hero after pain, with his memories of being neglected and shunned, would be really interesting and add some much needed depth to his character in the last bit of the series. Of course, you'd start the storyline early on and have it culminate after pain, but I think that's a good place for it to come to a head. The second thing is that I think Naruto needs to struggle with his goals a little more. When it comes to his dream of being Hokage, I think at some point he needs to acknowledge that a lot of that desire just came from wanting to be accepted. After pain, what purpose does he have to really continue on that path? Throughout the war, Naruto kind of just builds off his speech to pain and cements himself as the beacon of hope for the world. But I think it would be interesting if he begins to struggle with that. Does he want to do grand things like be Hokage, or is it enough to just be accepted? I think he should still ultimately decide that he will be Hokage, but have that motivation change slightly from acceptance to protection. This kind of happens in the original, but I think it should be a little more forward and clear-cut. I think the struggle should be a little more prominent. Instead of Naruto using Takno Jutsu on Obito, have Obito really shake his beliefs. Have a conversation where Tsunade, where he honest to goodness learns about the pressure and responsibility of being Hokage, and then ultimately, through fighting against people like Obito, Madara, and Sasuke, who are in such clear contradiction of him as a person, have Naruto realize that he wants to be Hokage because he believes in love over hatred. The extension of this is his relationship with Sasuke. Like I said earlier, I really think Naruto should be the last one on Sasuke's side, the only one who still wants to save him from the darkness. Recognizing that the people he cares about, like Sakura and Shikamaru for example, have come to either hate Sasuke or simply see him as an enemy should be a point of turmoil, where Naruto has to choose whether to follow through with his ideals of love conquering hate and possibly being abandoned by Sakura and his other friends for continually chasing after Sasuke, making him afraid that he'll be alone again like when he was a kid. All in all, I think Naruto's feelings and fear of loneliness should be a little more present in this story, and him struggling between right and wrong and his own personal insecurities would make him a deeper character, and it would make it all the more impactful when he chooses love over hatred and fear in the end. And then finally, there's everyone's favorite edgelord Sasuke Uchiha. Like Naruto, it's hard to make changes to someone who's so integral to the story as a whole, and I also think Sasuke's got a good move pool already, so there aren't really any changes I'd make to his jutsu, except maybe that he should use Kirin more because I love it and I always wanted to see it again. But one important thing I would do with Sasuke is have him interact more with everyone in part 1 of the series. Of course, most importantly would be Team 7 and especially Naruto, but I also think it's important for Sasuke to establish relationships with other members of the Konoha 13 as well. Maybe he could get along a little with Shikamaru, as the guys who get roped into the silly stuff that goes on with their teams. Maybe he could have a bond with Neji, like I said. Either way, I think Sasuke leaving the village at the end of part 1 would be more effective if it was a decision that affected all of the Konoha 13, not just Naruto and Sakura. Now, how this is complicated by having Choji die at the end of part 1, now that certainly makes things interesting. Like I said, Shikamaru and Ino would probably never fully forgive Sasuke for that, and Sakura would ultimately get over him too, leaving Naruto at the end of the day the only one who still believes in him and wants to save him from the darkness. But adding in and putting more emphasis on connections with characters like Neji and Lee would, first of all, make their reunion during the Itachi Pursuit mission much more impactful, but also add some nuance into how Konoha feels about Sasuke. The thing is, I don't think any of that matters if Sasuke himself still feels so wishy-washy. I do think he gets a lot of unnecessary hate from fans of the series, but I also think his motivations are a little loose. Unlike the rest of the characters that I've mentioned in this video, I'm actually not sure where I fall on these changes for Sasuke, but the way I see it, there are two paths for him. The first is keep the idea that he really has a good heart, but was really just confused and dealt a bad hand by having Itachi as an older brother, who not only slaughtered his entire clan, but used Tsukuyomi on him twice. Erase the part where he wants to destroy Konoha, and just have him be interested in personal revenge against Danzo and the elders who allowed the massacre to happen, all the while showing his struggle within himself, not wanting to live for revenge anymore. This would also have him align closer to where Naruto is throughout the series, having them both as sort of pseudo-revolutionaries who want to see the current shinobi system change, although how they believe that change should come about would still be different for each of them. I know this is sort of where Sasuke ends up by their final battle anyway in the original, but like I said, his motivations always felt a little loose, so instead of just hearing about the village from the Hokage, he should start leaning in this direction after Itachi's death, maybe even be pushed further down it after attacking the 5 Kage summit and seeing the politics that go on between high-level shinobi of the villages. I think this would give him some much-needed emotional stability as a character, and also make his eventual redemption a little more sympathetic. Now, the other option, of course, is to have Sasuke go full villain. I'm not too sold on this, but I do think it's worth mentioning because it definitely felt for a while as though this was where his character was going. I think you could play into that and have him sort of be a surprise twist at the end, where he betrays Obito and Madara to get the Tentals for himself, but admittedly I haven't thought too much about this one. It's an interesting thought though, and either way, Sasuke is already a pretty good character in my opinion. I just don't like the flimsiness of his motivations, so making them, whether good or bad, a little more clear and focused would be really helpful for him. But yeah, all in all, that's how I would change the Konoha 13. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you agreed or disagreed with the changes I made. Either way, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. I'm an anime and manga fan. I love talking about them. I'm excited to put out some more videos like this in the near future, so if you liked it, please subscribe for more, and until next time, see ya.